All right, everybody, so welcome back. We do have this live update for you from the Claude Noel Highway in Tobago. Very, very quiet this morning, eh? Tobago. Apparently, you all have an extended holiday over there. Yeah? You know, I would love to see one of the highways in Trinidad and Tobago like that, you know, on this morning. But yes, it's a beautiful day in Tobago.
Indeed.
Yeah, sunny day in Tobago. It looks a little bit, overcast a little bit, but it would seem that it's shaping up to be a good day in Tobago. All right, so we're moving on, everybody. So our next guest is a gentleman who has had a few days off. The gentleman has come back looking young and rejuvenated, you know. If he got about 4 days off and he's coming back looking so good, what is going to happen if he gets a month off? Yeah? Acting Inspector Ancil Forde has told you he get a few days off for truth.
Pleasant morning, Marlan.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming.
Diego. And thank you for the compliment.
Yeah.
And I hope that you're blessed with some more days.
The boss is always looking, you know. So,
Indeed.
Yeah. So what you have for us this morning, sir?
Yes, well, Marlan, we started the discussion with respect to dangerous dogs, dealing with the Dog Control Act, Chapter 6756 as amended. So whilst last week we covered some definitions, we dealt with the explanation as to who is a responsible person, owner, a keeper, and so on. I want to go further, but I want to also, expound a bit on the Class A dog, in addition to another definition. So, one, what is local authority? And because it will be referred to later on in the discussion. Local authority is defined as the council of a municipal corporation within the meaning of the Municipal Corporations Act or Tobago House of Assembly. And whilst I identified the dogs that are deemed to be Class A as per the schedule, and I'll just repeat them, the American Pit Bull Terrier, American Staffordshire Terrier, American Bully, Dogo Argentino, Japanese Tosa, and Fila Brasileiro as dogs listed to be Class A dogs. The further definition says that a Class A dog means a dog of the type listed in the schedule, I just call them out, or any dog bred therefrom. Or B, any dog which has the appearance and physical characteristics predominantly conforming to the standards of any of the types listed in the schedule, as established by the Federation Cynologique International, United Kennel Club, Canadian Kennel Club, or the American Kennel Club, as certified by a veterinarian surgeon, all right, or a veterinary surgeon. So one could understand that you may have a dog that we may say is mixed, yes?
Right.
But the definition goes on to tell you that if the characteristics of that dog is predominantly of one on the listed, on the schedule,
right,
then that dog as well is considered to be a Class A dog, all right? But further than that, it is to be certified by a veterinary surgeon. So you, the owner, to be certain as to whether your dog is a Class A dog, you will want to have that dog examined and so certified. So then you would know that based on my possession, owner, keeper of a Class A dog, that the law requires that I do certain things. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Marlan, a duty of care. Anybody who keeps a dog, all right, has to provide that dog with adequate means of survival. Food, water, shelter, exercise, attention, veterinary care when necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
To ensure that the welfare of the dog is taken care of. Now, if you have a Class A dog, the law requires that that dog be registered. Yes? and there's time frames. So, Section 6.1 of the Dangerous Dog Act says, a person who owns a Class A dog shall, within 6 months of coming into force of this act, or within 1 month of becoming the owner of the dog, whichever is later, register the dog in the prescribed form with the local authority for the area where he resides. So I just explained local authority. So you know you're dealing with the council and the municipal corporation's office, yes?
Okay.
All right. 6.2. Every owner of a pup of a Class A dog shall register that pup in accordance with the section where the pup is at least 6 months old or whose canines have descended. So you have pups when it is, in fact, within 6 months. Thereafter, you have to, so 6 months thereafter, sorry, you have to register those pups, yes? And there's another aspect of registration. It requires that the owner, the keeper of the Class A dog, have to have a license.
Okay.
A license to have those dogs, yes? So, Section 7.1. A person who owns a Class A dog shall, within 6 months of coming into force of this act, or within 1 month of becoming the owner of the dog, whichever is later, apply for and obtain a license in the prescribed form from the local authority for the area where he resides and the dog is kept. Yes? I did explain what is local authority, right? Now, Marlan, no owner or keeper of a dog shall permit the dog to enter any public space. In fact, Marlan, I touched on this on the last occasion, so I won't spend time further on that particular aspect. All right. Continuing with the licensing, yes? So, Section 7.5 says, a local authority shall not issue a license to the owner of a Class A dog unless the owner meets certain requirements within the Act, all right? So, 1, a certificate in the prescribed form verifying that the premises on which the dog is to be kept have been inspected and approved in accordance with Section 9. A policy of insurance issued in accordance with Section 11, so you have to have insurance for the dog, yes? A certificate of good character issued by the Commissioner of Police, not less than 6 months prior to the date of the application, and he has not been convicted of a criminal offense for which the penalty is a term of imprisonment for 1 year or more. A certificate issued by a veterinary surgeon certifying that the dog is a Class A dog. There are fees that go together with that license. Section 7.7 says, subject to subsection 8, the license fee required to be paid to local authority is $1,000 per dog where an owner owns 1 or 2 Class A dogs, or $1,500 per dog where an owner owns more than 2 Class A dogs, except that the license fee shall be $500 per dog where each Class A dog has been spayed or neutered. Yes? Whilst it is Marlan, you are required to register the dog. You're required to obtain a license for the possession or the keep of the dog. The license has a duration. It is for 2 years.
All right.
So at the expiration of the 2 years from the date on which you would have obtained that license has to be renewed.
Okay.
Yes? So you would go through that same process as you would have gone through initially. Yes? Now, Section 7.9. Every license issued in accordance with this section is valid for a period not exceeding 2 years from the date of its issue. Upon the granting of a license under this Act, there shall be issued and delivered to the licensee or his agent a metal label or other badge bearing a registration number in such form as may be prescribed. A person who owns a Class A dog shall ensure that the dog wears a collar at all times, and that metal label or badge referred to in the section before is securely affixed to the collar by that dog. Yes? There's a penalty. 716 says, a person who contravenes this section, that is the section I just read out,
Yes.
commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $50,000 and to imprisonment for 1 year. 50,000 and. So, you failed to register that dog.
This is $50,000 per dog?
I want to say that it may be applicable in that way. The
Yeah.
Act did not expressly say that.
Okay.
Yes? But understand that if you have a dog classified as in the E classification,
Yes.
you have to register that dog.
Yeah.
You have to have the dog license. You have to also have insurance.
And that
right?
has to be per dog.
Marlan, I would want to argue yes. Right? I would want to argue yes. But the law did not specifically say that. But the understanding is if you have one dog, you have to have it. I will also argue that for each dog. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Marlan, $50,000 and imprisonment for 1 year, not or. So the persons who they are uncertain, or you know that you have a dog that is not licensed, you need to understand what the law says, what is the liability, and you need to do the right thing and obtain that license, right, to safeguard yourself. In addition, Marlan, you are also, where does you own a dog that is deemed a Class A dog, to maintain perimeter fencing of at least 10 feet in height. And the fencing also includes the gates.
Right.
Yes, so you may have high walls, but then your gate shorter.
Yeah.
No, it also includes the gate. And section 9.6 says, a person who contravenes this section commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $50,000 and to imprisonment for 1 year. The fines are serious, Marlan.
A lot of fines and a lot of jail, you know.
Because of the danger that it poses to persons.
So there are penalties if you don't get the license for the dog, and there are penalties if your premises are not secure.
Not secured as per what is required.
Right.
Yes? So we go further, Marlan. Keeping an unlicensed Class A dog. So you know you have a dog that is deemed to be a Class A dog, and you decide, nobody can come in and check my house, of which persons in authority can, as per the Act. Yes. Section 10 says, a person who keeps a Class A dog which is not licensed in accordance with this Act commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $100,000 and to imprisonment for 3 years. So the fines, they are not optional as in one for the other. It is saying and, fine and for keeping an unlicensed Class A dog. With respect to the insurance, Marlan, there's a penalty as well. And the insurance has to be of a certain value.
Yes. Okay.
Yes? So section 11 says, a person who owns a Class A dog shall have a policy of insurance that provides coverage in respect of each claim for injury or death caused by that dog in the sum of not less than $250,000 or such higher sum as the minister may prescribe by order. So it's not just any value of an insurance policy.
Right.
There's a certain value, right, that you have to have, either that or above. And a person shall not keep a Class A dog unless there is in force a policy of insurance of the type referred to in subsection 1. The penalty, Marlan. A person who contravenes this section commits an offense
Yeah.
and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $75,000 and to imprisonment for 3 years.
Mr. Forde, I just have about 1 minute
Sure.
again.
So, Marlan, the intention of this discussion is to inform, is to advise, is to educate members of the public. Because recently there would have been reports of persons being injured by dogs, yes? And if it is that we are trying our best to keep members of the public informed, the least we expect of them is to try to do the right thing, understanding that I did not know before, I know now, yes? Yeah. So that persons, members of the public who go about their business, they can be afforded the necessary safety. Because if you decide to own or to keep a Class A dog, it must not be to the expense of the man walking in the street.
Yes.
If somebody trespasses, there are exceptions that that person had no right to trespass. And if they are so affected by your dog, the law makes provisions for that. But you, the owner, understand what is required and comply with the law in relation to Class A dogs.
Yes.
Yes?
Thank you very much, Mr. Forde. Thank you very much for coming this morning. So all of those of you who want Class A dogs, you have to have a number of things in place for that, right? If you can't afford it, well, I suggest you maybe go out and get a parrot, all right? We do have this for you before we go to our break. A sunset. Yeah, that's a lovely picture. Yeah.
Indeed.
From Angeli again. We're coming back, everybody.